Welcome, gearheads, to the Speed City F1 on SiriusXM post-qualifying show for the Formula One British Grand Prix. This is Jon Massengale, and I am joined by Jonathan Green and Bob Varsha. And in honor of the British Grand Prix, Jonathan, we will start with you, my friend. George Russell on pole.
Yeah, I'm sorry I've missed the last few, but I was waiting for a good one. Top three, baby. Top three. I love that. No, do you know what? I'm really happy for George Russell to have this purple patch. And I don't mean that I've got nothing against Hamilton, but let's face it, the future of Mercedes and that team is George Russell, because he's going to have this kid alongside him next year. We'll see what he does. But this couldn't have come. And actually, George said it. I mean, we would not have believed in Bahrain when they were saying that they were in the tests and in the race, that they were at 6s and 7s and that they would have to. It kind of shows you where modern Formula One is now. We are developing on the fly. And every one of those teams, 7 upgrades for Haas. And by the way, let's celebrate that as much. Hulkenberg, 6th. And
qualified both factory cars. Yeah.
And Sargent 12. So I'll put my American hat on as well. Brilliant. But no, I mean, all of the teams, McLaren obviously have been the most obvious in the last, few weeks, few races. Obviously, the dam has broken a little bit on Red Bull because the other teams have improved. We said it would happen. But I did not think Mercedes could do what they did today. Conditions or no conditions, it was the same for everybody. And that was pure speed and agility, and obviously the car feeling great.
Yeah, and you make a great point about this is what Formula One is. You know, you go watch an IndyCar race, NASCAR race, the only thing that's going to change is the livery on the cars, depending on sponsorship, and maybe a driver change somewhere toward the back of the pack. In Formula One, you get revamped race cars at every race, in addition to some of the best drivers in the world, and the weather conditions that can have such an impact as they did today. It's so unpredictable these days.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
I was going to say, Bob, we're sitting here talking about all these different drivers and how well everybody's doing, and we have not mentioned Max Verstappen.
Yeah. I mean, if Max hadn't gone off and damaged the under tray on his car, we might be lamenting yet another Max Verstappen pole. He just didn't have it. And, of course, his teammate, Sergio Perez, blotted his copybook, as the British say. I think that's our theme for the day or the weekend is going to be all the British euphemisms you can come up with. But Perez threw it off the road in Copse Corner, which is a hair-raising corner at the best of times. As soon as he got onto the slick, soft tires, as the track dried, couldn't get restarted, and so he's going to start 19th.
Yeah, just crazy. Well, look, we've got Chris Medland, who is live at Silverstone. Mr. Medland, I hear your mic lighting up. How are you?
I'm cold, guys. I'm good apart from that.
Bless his cotton.
It's not warm here, I tell you that, but it's windy, it's fresh. I'm gonna try and get a bit of insight from Red Bull, actually, after what you guys were just talking about in a second. The Red Bull press officer, Paul Smith, is dancing, trying to stay warm. The sun's kind of come out, but it's still very cold, which I think has played a part, though, in what we've seen today. When you see drivers going off, making mistakes, it's not just a case of, maybe it's a bit slippery and greasy in terms of a bit of moisture on the track, but the temperatures are so low that they haven't got the heat into the tyres on those outlaps, on those first laps. And with no heat, it really is such low grip. We saw it actually with even the junior categories when they were heading to the grid to start their races earlier today, when it's even colder. Drivers going off, just cruising to the grid. So it's been a treacherous day in that sense. But yeah, it's been fun to watch them all have to work for it.
I was astonished when everybody was going out for their last push lap in Q3, and they waited till the last minute. I mean, there were 2 minutes to go, and you still had 6 cars in the pit lane that hadn't hit the track yet, on a track that was giving up, a lap at about 90 seconds. In those cold temps, you'd think they'd have gone out earlier and maybe put in a little extra time warming up those tires.
True. I think part of it, though, comes down to as well if you then have a quick out lap because you don't have time, but you're going to do a quick out lap. Therefore, you're putting more energy in the tyre that way too, aren't you, by going quickly? So it's kind of a risk reward. But I did think it was going to get tight for a few teams. As you say, I was watching the kind of the pit entry or pit exit line, and then I was watching the sector times to see who would get across the line. And I want to say Fernando Alonso started his lap as the last driver with about 5 or 4 seconds to go in that session. So it was pretty tight there, and it's why we saw it in Q2 as well. I think Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton getting close together, trying to find gaps to get themselves out on track to start their quali laps, and it was all a bit messy, and it's because they leave it so late. But also got to factor in their track evolution. We've had a lot of rain, so not much rubber down on the track, and every extra lap that is completed in the dry adds some rubber, increases the grip, increases the speed basically of the racetrack. So if you're the last car to start your lap, or you can leave it as late as possible, you've actually got the best track conditions as long as it doesn't rain.
Chris, Silverstone's always had this sort of weird biosphere anywhere where the rain could come and it can be just over Silverstone. It's kind of one of those anomalies. But with this kind of unexpected, unless I'm wrong, unexpected cold weather, what are you now expecting for tomorrow? More of the same, or will it go back to what it was yesterday?
No, I'm thinking more the same. It looks like temperatures will be similar, at least. Whether we get, I think it's more likely to be a dry race, but there's a threat of showers through the day, which is kind of what we've seen evolve today. It was horrible at the start of today. It was hammering it down, really, really bad weather. The Formula 3 race that was meant to take place, that got postponed to this evening because it was too wet to hold it. So that's going to happen in a couple of hours now instead. But as I say, the sun has come out now. It's kind of started to clear up a little bit. Very windy and breezy, as it always is here, because it's an old airfield. So you're very exposed kind of on a plateau up here. But I think we're looking at a similar set of temperatures and a similar kind of weather condition tomorrow, which, probably two weeks ago, that was less likely. But I'll find someone who likes to speak about the weather as well as a fellow Brit, Christian Horner. We're heading into somewhere warm, actually. I think the Red Bull Hospitality. But Christian, 4th and 19th, I bet wasn't on your bingo card at the start of today.
No, it was, frustrating in many respects to lose Checo in that first session. That certainly wasn't in the plan. And then the damage that Max picked up in Q1. The mechanics did an incredible job to get it repaired and turn around. So fourth on the grid actually was a big lap from Max to put it there, with the difference that it was to pole. So considering the damage that he had.
I was going to say he beat Oscar Piastri in one of the McLarens to get onto that second row, but can you quantify how much lap time he was losing with that damage?
Significant. I mean, there's a lot of damage. At one point it was reported as 100 points of downforce. The mechanics managed to improve that significantly, but it was some way off optimum.
So would you say you had the car for pole position today, looking the way it played out?
I would have been close. I mean, we won't know. Mercedes were quick today in these cool conditions. We often see them quick in the colder conditions. So congrats to them on the front row, and we'll be fighting hard tomorrow.
Would it be tough tomorrow? And we're thinking similar conditions again, maybe mixed conditions. Have you got a real fight in your hands once again?
Yeah, we've got a proper fight on our hand tomorrow. But it's a good day for British motorsport. 3 British drivers in the first 3. Now the Euros. Let's hope the footballers can do as well as the drivers.
I'm more nervous about that part. Just finally on Checo, I mean, how much pressure is he under just to turn it around tomorrow? He needs to show some fight coming through from 19th.
Yeah, we need to score some points tomorrow, and that's crucial.
Okay, thank you very much. Good luck tomorrow.
Thanks.
In case you're wondering,
all this talk about British, 1, 2, 3, and like you said, Bob, the euphemisms and all that. But to me, as an American, I want this race to be as much British as it is. The iconic race that it is, I want this, and I'm excited for it.
Of course, we all are. And in case you're wondering, right now, I just checked the weather. It's 58 degrees Fahrenheit with the wind at 15 miles an hour, gusting to 25 miles an hour. So it probably feels a lot colder than that 58 number. And it was a lot colder, as Chris described this morning. Plus wet, plus windy. Typical British summer weather, they call it.
Absolutely. Hey, and joking aside, as the Brit here, I'm delighted for those young Brits, and for Hamilton as well. He hasn't had a break. But it's more important that we've got 3 different teams up there. That's what I really like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, guys, let's get a quick break in. And when we come back, we'll see who else Chris can get on the microphone. And we'll continue to break down the post-qualifying for British Grand Prix. Back after this. All right, we're still live on YouTube. We'll see who we got out there. Lots of the usual boys and girls. We got Troy. Troy Lewis is from the UK. He says, "Greetings from London, UK. Tuning in for an American perspective, but it's going to be spicy tomorrow." Spicy on track, and
yeah, spicy is a good word for it, I think.
Yeah, don't tell Christian that.
Yeah.
Boy, and I was thinking, as Christian was speaking, I was thinking of that lap of Verstappen's as he tried to put it out there, and he wasn't alone. If you were watching, you saw that the top 5 guys on the timesheets going out for their final push lap were unable to even do what they had done previously in the first sector of the lap. So when you expect the track to be, rubbering in even more and getting better and better, it was worse for a lot of these guys. And Verstappen was actually having to, deal with snap oversteer all the way around that lap. So God knows what would have been like if he'd gone out there with what Christian called 100 points less downforce. He might have joined his teammate in the gravel trap outside Copse.
Yeah, I think that shows 2 things, doesn't it? It's the tire temps at the start of the lap, like you said, about maybe not being quite up to temperature, and also the gusts of wind that you were talking about as well. That is breezy, very breezy. So you get a tailwind into a corner and it's pushing the car, and it makes it very tough to handle. So I'll admit, I saw that snap that Max had and thought, he's in real trouble to improve. And as you say, he was one of the few actually that could put it together for the whole lap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I saw Max in the gravel, I thought, oh my gosh, he's not going to make it back on. But he did the right thing, just like Hulkenberg, where they went over to that little paved section on the far left and got back on track.
Yeah, take it all the way to the wall. Well, how about Hulkenberg? Jonathan mentioned him already. Out qualifying both factory Ferraris. Whew.
Yeah, just brilliant. I mean, I'm stunned. I mean, Hulkenberg.
Hello, I'm Jenny Gow from BBC F1. You are listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
The Speed City Saturday on SiriusXM is brought to you by CrowdStrike. Stop today's most sophisticated cyber attacks at the office, the racetrack, and everywhere in between. Learn more at crowdstrike.com/XM. All right, during the break, we were talking about Nico Hulkenberg. And Chris Medland, I want to ask you, the Haas team has brought lots of upgrades, and a little bit unusual where they used to pile up all the upgrades and then bring them at once. Remember, we saw that in Austin last year, but they're bringing them more on a regular basis. Do you think that, is it a combination of the upgrades or the cool temperatures? How much do you think that the cool temperatures played into Haas, let's say?
I think it's a bit of a combination of a few things. It's a pretty big package they brought here. This is substantial still. It's kind of in the style that they have done in the past. So it's not a case of just the bits they've drip fed, although they have done that prior to now. But I need to double check as well that they had enough for both cars. And it might just be on Nico Hulkenberg's car, because I think it was with the timing that they only could bring one package here, and it was the lead driver in the championship that got it. But I will go and try and double check that before off air so that I'm not doing disservice to either driver. But that does show the way they're pushing. It's different. I actually spoke to their technical director, Andrea De Zordo, in Austria, who admitted it was a big challenge to take that role on, but he was excited by it. And it did feel like a fresh start for the team under Ao Komatsu. And I think certain things have changed. Different approaches have been taken, and it's kind of coming together. So really positive signs for that team. And it's also a reflection, isn't it, of how close this grid's been getting. Because if you can find a little bit of performance that definitely translates into on-track performance, it moves you a long way. And don't forget, Hulkenberg's been putting it in the top 10 quite regularly in qualifying. Yeah. But for the third row, that was pretty special.
Yeah. Hey, and Jonathan, I mean, you got to be excited for Audi. The guys there just looking at Hulkenberg going, we've stolen a fantastic driver here.
Yeah, packages are packages, though. I think Hulk's walked into Haas, and everything that Chris just said, much as we love Gunter, maybe that fresh air, that change of air at Haas has been the catalyst they need. Remember that Io was also a strategist, and for whatever reason, they've got this down now.
Yeah.
And honestly, we could be. Don't want to get ahead of myself, but Haas could be fighting for 6 in the championship if they keep scoring points. If he stays where he is tomorrow, that's another bag of points.
Yeah, hey,
Sure.
Bob,
And
you agree that I mean, look, like Jonathan said, we love Gunther, but just sometimes just a change can be good in and of itself. But
sure.
The strategic mind of Ayo Komatsu, I mean, what do you think?
Well, I was thinking of Ayo and the times we've spoken with him this year. He is almost inevitably upbeat. He's happy to be there. He's excited about what he's doing. And I think that rubs off on the team. The oldest adage in sports is you can't fire the team, so you fire the manager. And that's kind of what happened at Haas. And now they've got Ayo in there. He certainly looks outwardly like a breath of fresh air. And they've got, good news after good news. Big upgrade seems to be working. They just signed Oliver Bierman this week, so they're going to have him in the car. And it's a question about whether Magnussen will partner him next year or they're going to replace K-Mag as well. So, these are interesting times at Haas, and they're looking good. And Gene is closing up most of his NASCAR operation. He'll have more time and attention and probably resources to devote to his Formula One crew. And, it's all good right now, I think.
It's always you, Bob, that I'm cutting off, isn't it? But I've got Zach Brown here now, and we've sheltered inside to get out of the wind. That's freezing out there, Zach. But this is going to sound strange, I think, to say you're third and fifth. You had a drive in the top three. You were fighting for pole. But you're a bit disappointed with that today?
We are, because we think we could have gone a little better. But, congratulations to Mercedes. They're having a pretty epic comeback. So I think they're definitely clearly back in the game. I think, Lando didn't get a great lap in. And Oscar, I think we maybe didn't give him the ideal track position. But P3, P5, we can race from there. I think race pace between ourselves, Mercedes, and the Red Bull, there's nothing between it. So I think we're going to see a pretty awesome race tomorrow.
Yeah, you're next to the Apex GP guys here from the F1 film in terms of the hospitality units. This is a bit like a movie script. You've got three British drivers on the top three. Like you say, Mercedes back in the game. Lando versus Max on the second row again tomorrow into turn one. I mean, how do you see it playing out?
I think it's you're not going to want to miss it. It's going to be really good. I think we have a chance at winning, but I think so do the other guys. So strategy will be important. Weather may come into play. It doesn't look like it'll rain during race time, but you never know with the wind that's blowing all the weather around here.
Are you expecting Mercedes to be as strong in race trim as they have been today?
I think so. They've looked very strong. I think the conditions suit them. So we're definitely not of the opinion that we shouldn't count on them to be putting up a pretty epic battle.
And just funny, what's the McLaren approach now? Because we had the incident in Austria, and obviously Lando didn't get to score in that race, and a big opportunity to claw some points back on Red Bull, and the constructors went missing. Do you look to try and consolidate in the sense of both drivers getting good scoring results, or are you always all out for the win?
No, we got to go for the win, and that's what we always do. Now we're in a position to do it. We'll look at how the race plays out, and then of course always be thinking about the Constructors' Championship. But I think at the start of the race, you just got to go as fast as possible, and then see where the chips fall.
And missing California right now?
Missing California right now, and typical British summer, right?
It's delightful. I'm embarrassed to bring people here at this time, but thanks for your time and good luck tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Well, you can't be missing it too much. People are falling in the streets in California. It's so hot.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to be in California and a lot of other places here stateside. Yep. But yeah, I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Nobody does pomp and circumstance like the Brits, and I'm sure they'll show up and show off tomorrow.
Yeah, they will. Hey, I got a point that I'd like to make. That kind of to a certain extent, both Christian and Toto and now Zach have made. This is going to be the first time, forget the Brit side of it, the first time we've really got a strategy race. You've got Mercedes now 1-2, and they can decide how to play that. McLaren, right up there, top five, the pair of them. And again, they're going to go for the win, as you've seen, but how will they do it? How will they strategically do it? And the other part is, as Christian pointed out, they could have been pole today. So how, don't get too jingoistic, because Red Bull aren't out of it. Once they fix that flaw, they have a capable car in the top five.
And they're allowed to fix that flaw as well, we must add. They're allowed to, under Parc Fermé, you can replace like-for-like parts, as long as they're identical parts. So if they've got a spare flaw, they could put that on. But also, if there's damage that they can repair physically, it will need to be kind of overseen by the FIA. just to make sure that they do get an identical part at the end of it, but you are allowed to repair damaged parts.
Well, I'll be interested to read your F1.com strategy piece.
Well, I no longer write that. I passed that off because I wanted to be more focused on chatting to you guys. So I get to read that myself afterwards.
Would you agree with that, though, that this is that opportunity strategy-wise?
Yes, yeah, big time. I do the preview now where you have to sort of look at what are you looking out for in the race in general. And I've got to admit, actually, I don't know if this is blowing my own trumpet or admitting something I shouldn't, but I'd pre-written Sergio Perez under pressure and essentially just left a space to say where he'd qualified because I had zero faith the way things have been going recently that he was going to have a strong qualifying session. That exceeded low expectations, shall we say, with how it went today. But it just seems to be building in the wrong direction. And the noise around him has started to become, well, it doesn't matter if there's a contract there. You know, you've got to deliver, otherwise something might change.
Right.
So I would say that, as you say, like every other team has two drivers up there. Ferrari just about with 11th for Leclerc, which is a real disappointment for them. But for the main contenders, they've all got two cars except Red Bull.
Yeah, that really has changed the balance. You know, to put one car up there to battle with Verstappen when he couldn't get, Perez up there close behind him, that's one thing. But as you say, when two cars from very quick contending teams are ahead, that may be too much of a fight, even for Max Verstappen. It's going to be interesting to watch him come forward. Sainz, if he can come forward. Leclerc, if he can come forward. And Perez, if he can come forward, if he can keep it on the island.
Yeah, Leclerc in 11th place. I mean, that is a huge surprise. Chris, during the race, he was complaining about his tires. I don't know if it was just the cool temperatures maybe, or the way the Ferrari is setting up in these cool temperatures, or if they're just still, what they bring upgrades right after Monaco, and none of those have succeeded.
Yeah, that's true. They were actually trying to work out what they were going to do in terms of the parts they're putting on the car this weekend. We had different kind of configurations of the upgrades that they were running, and I think Carlos Sainz went quite early with just the Imola spec and nothing after Imola. Eventually, that's what I believe Leclerc went for as well, heading into qualifying, which just shows the team's a little bit lost in terms of the latest upgrades they've brought, which is a surprise because prior to that, all the upgrades they brought seem to be doing a good job. And we sung Ferrari's praises for most of the season. So strange that just when you were starting to build confidence in the team, it's had a blip. But at the same time, it could be as simple as not getting enough temperature in the tyres. And he was told, wasn't he, that the track was evolving by about a second a lap. So that's what I was saying earlier about the more laps done, when there's more grip, it gets quicker. That's a big track evolution, a second per lap that you're going to find if you just keep running. So you have to get your timing right as well. If anyone actually thinks back to watching the first part, Q1, and Valtteri Bottas going out first on the slicks after the red flag and going fastest and looking really good. And you're like, wow, look at that. Confident, pushing hard on a damp track. Bottas looks on it. But just because the timing meant that his final lap wasn't the last lap of the session, and he ended up bumped down out in Q1 himself when he clearly had the pace if he timed it right. So that can also play a big role.
Interesting. Yeah. And hey, Chris, you mentioned a while ago that you were near the Apex garage, the Hollywood garage for Brad Pitt's new movie. And we have to talk about the incredible name that they've chosen for the F1 movie, which is F1. No, actually, I like it. I think it's fine. But Chris, what's going on down there? I mean, it looked like they were ready to race.
Yeah, they've got a full hospitality unit down there. I've actually gone to the other end now, towards Haas, to see if I can find either Hulkenberg or Komatsu or anyone from the team. Although I can't say I'm hopeful; they seem to have already disappeared. But yeah, the Apex motorhome is, I think it's the old Williams hospitality unit from about 5 or 6 years ago. So it's a big size, and it's in between McLaren and Aston Martin. So Aston Martin were joking that they've been shunted down to the very end. And it's a bit weird here at Silverstone because of the topography. There's actually a big wall and you're lower at one end of the paddock than the end that most people come in and where all the media aspects are. So not many people go down as far as Aston Martin. Now they've got another team in between them and everybody else. So they found that a bit strange, but it fits in so seamlessly. You don't really notice it, which is, hats off to them. They were doing a lot of that here last year, and they've continued that. There's been some some shots or scenes shot over the last few days. Brad Pitt's been driving at one stage, quite a few runs for the cars out there. and they've been actually out and about in the paddock doing some filming as well. So lots of different scenes being captured. And I believe both cars will be on the back of the grid again tomorrow, but I don't think they're moving. I don't think you'll see them go anywhere other than just be static at the back of the grid during the grid ceremony. But you might spot that if you're watching the telecast.
Hey, Chris, I saw somebody on Twitter talking about somebody trying to pump up the crowd, and the crowd was too cold early on. But I mean, are they interacting with the crowd and trying to do things?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a lot of that. And to be fair, the crowd does respond. I mean, listening to those laps be completed, I can tell you that by far the most popular driver around here still is Lewis Hamilton. There was almost a groan when George took pole from Lewis. And I don't think it's that anyone was sad to see a Brit on pole, but if they got to choose, I think they'd have had Hamilton getting his pole position here. So it's you hear that in the media centre. We hear it from the crowd. There's such a huge crowd here. It'll be around 470,000, I think, over the 3 days. So you get a lot of noise from them.
Yeah, and that's
a USA crowd.
Yeah, and the one thing you can guarantee with the British crowd is that they're a crowd that go every year, sit in the same seat or roughly, and so they have been, they have watched 8 wins by that young man back in his day. So of course that he's been the ever present factor for them. He's up there with Mansell now in terms of the love from the crowd, because they come every year to see him.
All right, guys, we got to sneak a break in here real quick. I want to talk a little driver market after these messages.
I almost laughed out loud there when they were discussing the weather and how cold it is. And Jonathan was talking about how loyal and enthusiastic the British crowd is. I can picture 2 people. In fact, just the other night, I was talking with somebody about this race, and they said, "Oh yeah, I've been to Silverstone. It's, the weather can be raw and it's hard to get in and out of, and it's sort of muddy, and there's a lot of carousing going on, and the fans go crazy over the British drivers." And the other person in me was thinking, yeah, and what's your problem? I mean, this is it. This is the British Grand Prix, delightful, beautiful, ugly in many ways, difficult. It's Britain. It's one of the big events of the year, man. You want to be there.
Let me check in with the guys here. Joe says these are very good times in Formula One, talking about how, in fact, leading right into that, Andy P says what you said, Jonathan. Anyone in the top 5 can easily win tomorrow. Love that. And Joe says, I was shocked to learn Silverstone sells Budweiser.
It's very popular.
Well, it is the king of beers, isn't it? I mean,
in fact, I used to live in Barnes. I used to live next to the Budweiser factory on the river.
Well,
why would that surprise you?
Yeah,
it's right there in Barnes.
Is it the White Hart or the White Horse that's on the corner next to it?
I lived on my flat's on White Hart Lane, so yes, about
the White Hart,
about 100 yards from there on the corner is the Old Young's Brewery, and it's now owned by Budweiser.
Yeah, it's huge. I used to live in that area as well, and it was a beautiful part of the world.
It is a lovely part of the world.
I'm George Russell, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, when we went to break, I said I was going to talk driver market. And yesterday, during one of the practices, Will Buxton was talking about a rumor that Daniel Ricciardo is being talked about now to replace Checo Perez. We talked about this a little earlier in the show. Checo has just been struggling in a big way, but that was a little eyebrow raising to me. Not that Ricciardo's not worthy of it. It's just, you got Liam Lawson, you got all these other people that potentially could take that seat. John,
Your Honor, let me stop you there.
Yeah,
he's not worthy of it currently.
Okay, well there you go.
Lawson is more worthy of that seat than Ricciardo. He's had his chance. Lawson's not, hasn't had any chance because he's had the 5 Grand Prix. He brilliantly did all those. But honestly, Ricciardo is not doing anything for me to be able to be top 5 with Verstappen every week.
What
Well,
say
I
you,
can
Mr.
wade in
Varsha?
here, actually. Oh, sorry. I was going to go on, Bob.
That wasn't me. I'm listening.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say that I can wade in a little bit on this. There was some background info given and chats and things, and the feeling really is that Perez needs to find some sort of form or some sort of result between now and the summer break. Otherwise, I think there will actually be a decision to make at Red Bull. Now, I'm not saying they will definitely replace him, but I think they will be considering it seriously and looking at the options. But a big part of that problem, and that's been said internally, is that Ricciardo is not banging the door down to take that seat right now. He's not. They said it's kind of, it's a like for like replacement if you do that at the moment. So you're not guaranteed, or you're really hoping that something special comes out of Ricciardo in the same way that right now you're hoping it comes out of Perez. And that's a problem. You want to have someone who is guaranteed to improve the team if you're going to make that sort of change, or as close as is possible. But for Liam Lawson, he's doing a lot of testing. He's got a testing of a previous car run coming up at Imola, I think in the 2022 car very soon. Also going to be running the current Red Bull, the 2024 car, I'm told, here at Silverstone in a filming day. So it's 200 kilometers he's limited to, but he will get to run in it at some stage. I believe that's at the end of this week, because there's some tyre testing going on that Pirelli are doing with a few teams on Tuesday and Wednesday. Haas are one of the teams doing that, and a quick aside on that, that'll be Pietro Fittipaldi and Ollie Behrman running for Haas. And Behrman's race engineer is going to be the current performance engineer for Kevin Magnussen. And I must admit, her surname escapes me, but her first name's Laura, and she'll be the first race engineer for Haas that they've ever used. So that's a cool promotion for her for that test. But those testing opportunities are going to be really important, actually, for a lot of these young drivers. And I think that means there's a big chance for Lawson there just to stake his claim. I'm almost certain he's going to end up in that RB car next year. And I think the rumor, I haven't heard it that Ricciardo's going to take that seat, but I can see how it gets there. Whatever Will was getting at will be because if Red Bull decide, you know what, Checo's not doing it, we really have to make a change, then the most likely driver to be able to handle that situation is someone who's been there before and done it before and has experience. That's not to say, I'm kind of with you, Johnny, that Ricciardo hasn't proven it recently, but I can see the logic. You put Lawson in, you could burn him, and it's such an unknown.
Yeah. But I'd also argue that what's the point of putting Ricciardo in there for this interim period? I mean, you've got to look to the future, and I'm sort of starting to worry about Red Bull's credibility with their program, because they've lost Yuri Vips now to Indy again. There are other Red Bull, Jack Crawford now with Aston Martin. If they don't put Lawson in soon, what's the point in being a Red Bull junior?
Right.
I mean, that's a fair point. Isaac Hadjar was getting the run actually recently in the main Red Bull car, wasn't he, on Friday? He got to FP1 in that. So I can see your point. I can see your argument on that front, but I think it's one where right now they're looking for instant performance in a car that's very hard to perform in, as we've seen from Alex Albon, Pierre Gasly in the past as well. So that's why a junior driver is so less likely to get that exact seat. And of course, if you give Ricciardo a chance, you say sink or swim, you are also then obviously opening the door for Lawson to go into the RB earlier.
Mm-hmm. I will say there was a lot of head shaking going on in the Red Bull garage when Perez went off in Q1. That may be a trick of the television coverage, but Horner was shaking his head. Mechanics were shaking their heads. Some of the mechanics, or some of the personnel, I should say, in the garage at Red Bull looked positively angry. And it's easy to think that that's probably directed at Checo.
Yeah, and Checo he was struggling on the radio saying, "Can you pull me forward?" Like a clear violation of the rules. You can't be pulled forward. He was staying in the car, doing kind of desperate to get the car back on track. Mm-hmm. He knew what that meant, obviously, but it just really seemed completely disoriented about the whole thing, about what he could do, what he couldn't do.
That's kind of a funny thing about, top level athletes, who forgetting what the ball strike count is, or how many outs there are, or how many timeouts we have remaining in this game. It's funny when you see a top level athlete who just blanks on the rules. I mean, a Formula One driver should know you can't get assistance with the car or you're done. And yet Checo had to ask.
Yeah, I think there was a bit of desperation in there, wasn't there? But I will also add, I said about it happening earlier, we had the current second place driver in the F3 Championship slide off at Stowe much later, very early on this morning in the rain, on the way to the grid ahead of the race. So, the pit lane had not opened yet. They're actually just moving their cars to that point. And he stayed in his car in a pouring rain and got a crane lifted his car and put it back on the tarmac, and he could carry on because it was before a racing or a competitive session. Now, I believe it could well have been as well that Perez saw that and goes, maybe they'll do the same for me. You're gonna double check or triple check, aren't you, before you get out the car? So once you're out the car, that's it. Which happened with George Russell here with Zhou Guanyu's crash. He got out to help, and that actually meant that his race was over, even though he could have got back in his car and driven it.
Yeah, fair point. Have we gone down the grid yet?
No, I don't think we have. You want to do it? You want me to do it, Mr. Varsha?
Well, I think we ought to let people know in case they didn't catch the coverage. We've been talking about it for 40 minutes. Let's tell them where guys are starting.
Yeah,
barring decisions of the stewards.
That's true. Let's see. Let me get that back up. The Mercedes front row: George Russell on pole, followed by Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, Oscar Piastri, Nico Hulkenberg in 6th, Carlos Sainz, Lance Stroll, Alexander Albon, Fernando Alonso in 10th, followed by the surprise Ferrari, Charles Leclerc in 11th. Logan Sargent, American in 12th. Good showing there. Yuki Tsunoda, Zhou Guanyu, Daniel Ricciardo, Valtteri Bottas, Kevin Magnussen, Esteban Ocon, Checo Perez, and Pierre Gasly. So speaking of Gasly, he has a 50-place grid penalty tomorrow. Those always crack me up. I was listening to all the jokes about where he's starting. I decided he's going to be starting from his boyhood home is what I think after.
Yeah, that's about right.
50-place.
Well, then he's going to have to catch the ferry.
Yeah.
I feel a bit bad for the FIA here because that used to be the case, and that was what would look stupid is they'd hand out a document that said 50-place grid penalty, and because of that, and because it was stupid and it was always laughed at, they changed it where if you got at least 15 positions in one hit, it was an automatic back of the grid start. So the document that came out with all the things they changed didn't say 50 positions. It said he has to start from the back of the grid. It's a lot of things. It's back of the grid. So they've actually removed that, but people still go back to the old rules and add them up and then go, well, that's what it would have been. So they've tried to cover their backs, but
because it's a lot more fun.
Exactly. I mean, F1 doesn't let itself have fun too often, does it? So Although I'll tell you what, just a quick aside, because I know we're running out of time, but Max Verstappen has just walked past, heading back into Red Bull Hospitality. Been doing a big debrief with the media, actually, with the print media. He's been speaking for a long time. I saw him stood there. So he's obviously got quite a bit to say. Now, it might be that he's unhappy about things. It might be about, maybe he's proud of his performance. We'll have to find out probably tomorrow, actually, when we do the build up to the race. But that's kind of unusual. He's only quite short with his answers, clear and concise, but not hanging around for too long. And it's freezing and it just rained as well. And he's braved all of that to talk for a while. So maybe he had something he wanted to get off his chest.
All right. Well, we'll have to watch for that. But we are out of time. But let me break it down for tomorrow. So tomorrow morning, starting at 9 a.m. Eastern time, our pre-race show. And that's a 1-hour show. And then the race with the BBC feed. And then we're back live for our post-race show, our 1-hour post-race show. So join us for all of that. And yes, we will talk to you tomorrow morning.